Can books about writing really help? Hey there, writers. Welcome back to Write, Writer, Write. I'm your host, Deborah Froese. Yes, books about writing really can help. A number of them supported me at different stages of my creative journey. Books that sparked new ideas, deepened my skills, and helped me understand the significance of what I was trying to do. You know that feeling when you read something that makes your heart beat faster and your brain light up? That's a kind of magic, isn't it? Well, that's the kind of magic I felt when I read the titles I want to share with you today. If you've listened to a few episodes of Write, Writer, Write, you'll know your mindset is a huge part of your writing practice. In fact, a healthy mindset and high self awareness are critical for authentic writing and productivity. So let's start there. Remember The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron? I've mentioned that book a few times, and you probably haven't heard the last of it. The Artist's Way was published more than 30 years ago, and it keeps hanging around because it's effective. This classic helped me get unstuck when I was a busy mom of school aged children wondering where my creative spark went. I devoured the book and its exercises, and in many ways, it kickstarted my self awareness journey. With 12 chapters arranged as a 12-week program, The Artist's Way is especially helpful if your creativity feels tangled up in old stories about self worth or perfectionism. Each week, Cameron shares stories about recovering creatives who found a path forward with her methods, and she shares these methods in her book to help you excavate your own creativity through inner reflection. I've gone through the program a few times, and each time I discovered new insights. I often mention the Artist's Way during workshops, and invariably, anyone who buys a copy and dives in comes back to me and excitedly reports discoveries they made about themselves and their work. In Big Magic Creative Living Beyond Fear, Elizabeth Gilbert explores the wonder of creativity. The magic in Big Magic is creative inspiration itself. Gilbert describes it as a mysterious, almost mythical force that brings ideas to you. She likens the ideas to visitors who will stick around if you're open, brave, and willing to work. I listened to the audio version of this book twice, and each time I was drawn in by Gilbert's joy filled voice and uplifted by her observations. Creativity is magic, and it's also an intrinsic part of us that we don't always pay enough attention to. The Creative Act, A Way of Being by music producer Rick Rubin, offers a series of meditations on how to live a creative life. His take on creativity is similar to Elizabeth Gilbert's. He emphasizes receiving creativity rather than generating it, viewing artists as antennas for ideas that already exist in the ether. He describes the creative process as a journey, not a destination. Even if you're not familiar with Rick Rubin, you'll probably recognize some of the musicians he's worked with, from the Red Hot Chili Peppers, Aerosmith, and Black Sabbath to Adele, Lady Gaga, and even Johnny Cash. Artists like working with Rubin because he strives to understand their vision and help them express it, rather than just imposing his own preferences. The same attitude comes through clearly in the Creative Act, and that's part of its power. Each entry is so deep and thought provoking that this is not a book you can sit down and devour. Instead, it's something you return to again and again, gradually absorbing the wisdom of his observations. Creative Calling by photographer and entrepreneur Chase Jarvis delivers a simple yet powerful message. Creativity is an inherent part of who we are as humans, and it's not just for artists. He wrote Creative Calling as the guide he wished he'd had at the start of his own creative journey, when he gave up plans for medical school to become a photographer. He includes thoughts from successful creators, including entrepreneurs like Richard Branson, Marie Forleo, and Gary Vaynerchuk, and musicians like Lady Gaga and Jay-Z. Brene Brown makes an appearance, and so does the late spiritual teacher, Ram Dass. Jarvis writes, "Creators create. Action is identity. You become what you do. You don't need permission from anybody to call yourself a writer, an entrepreneur, or musician. You just need to write, build a business, or make music. You've got to do the verb to be the noun." He offers a framework for making creativity part of your life, not just your work. This book is equal parts mindset, productivity, and purpose. The next four books on my list get to the heart of storytelling. While they lean toward fiction, the concepts also apply to memoir and narrative nonfiction because they align with how the human brain naturally processes story. The Hero with a Thousand Faces by Joseph Campbell is a classic. Campbell, a mythologist, studied stories from cultures around the world and identified a common pattern, what he called the monomyth, or the hero's journey. At its core, rising tension and transformation. You've seen Campbell's influence everywhere, from stories like Star Wars, The Matrix, and Harry Potter, to memoirs like Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins and Educated by Tara Westover. Campbell dives into the psychology of transformation, why we tell stories, how they reflect our inner lives, and what they reveal about being human. Yes, it can feel a little dense and academic at times, but it's a gold mine if you want to understand the heart of story. With his book, The Storytelling Animal, Jonathan Gottschall explores why humans are so hooked on stories in the first place. Drawing from neuroscience, evolutionary biology, and pop culture, he shows that storytelling isn't just entertainment, it's how we make sense of the world. Gottschall says stories help us survive and thrive as a species. From dreams and gossip to religion and politics, we constantly turn life into narrative, often without even realizing it. In that way, his work feels like a modern echo of Campbell's. One looks to ancient myth, the other to brain science, but both arrive at a similar truth. Storytelling is fundamental to who we are. And then there's Story by Robert McKee. This one's more practical, less about why story matters and more about how to make it work. Although it's directed at screenwriters, it's a masterclass on storytelling for anyone who wants to write a compelling tale. McKee breaks down what holds an audience's attention, how structure builds momentum, and how every narrative choice creates ripple effects. And he uses classic films for examples. Save the Cat Writes a Novel by Jessica Brody explores storytelling through plot analysis. Adapted from Blake Snyder's popular screenwriting method, it offers one of the most accessible approaches to story structure available. In Save the Cat, Brody lays out a 15-beat story roadmap and illustrates each beat with examples from best-selling novels. Even if you prefer a looser planning style, like the form not formula approach I talked about in the novel planning series, Save the Cat is a worthwhile read. It's engaging, clear, and filled with aha moments that can help you see how all the pieces of a story fit together. You can find plenty of books that delve into the how-to of stringing words together. I'll share a few of my favorites. On Writing by Stephen King is another classic. Part memoir, part how-to, it shares how King became a writer and what he learned along the way. It's funny, honest, and packed with practical advice. When I first read this book, my heart leapt because I recognized many of his lessons had arisen in my own journey, and somehow it validated what I was doing. King treats writing like a job: show up, do the work. But he also reminds us that we don't need fancy tools, just honesty, grit, and consistent practice. While King approaches the discipline of writing, Saul Stein approaches refinement of the craft in his book, Stein on Writing. He was an accomplished editor, novelist, and playwright who spent over 50 years in publishing. He worked with authors like James Baldwin and Orson Welles. Stein on Writing stands out because he doesn't just teach craft, he reveals how an editor thinks. And what writer doesn't want to know that? Drawing from published books and unpublished drafts, he shows what works and how to fix what doesn't. He uses before and after comparisons to illustrate techniques for improving everything from flat dialogue to vague characterizations. Now, tell me the truth. Have you ever struggled with the idea of show don't tell? I sure did. Rivet Your Readers with Deep Point of View by Jill Elizabeth Nelson can help clarify it for you. In just 62 pages, she brings show don't tell to life with specific examples. They help you slide inside your character's skin. If you've ever been told your writing feels distant or detached, or you're just struggling with how to breathe life into your pages, check this one out. For even more ideas for breathing life into your work, I highly recommend the Writers Helping Writers series by Angela Ackerman and Becca Puglisi. Each volume in this series explores a specific element of fiction: emotions, character traits, motivations, settings, and more. Whether you're crafting a character's emotional expression or establishing the setting for a pivotal scene, You'll find plenty of vivid details, sensory cues, and even writing tips in these books. If you're not sure which one to choose, the emotion thesaurus is a great place to start. Look up any emotion and you'll find a whole bunch of ways characters can express it. Writing can be a solitary journey, but it doesn't have to be a lonely one. Books like the ones I've shared today are companions and mentors. They inspire me with a sense of camaraderie that comes from finding a kindred spirit in their pages. I hope a few of these titles will do the same for you. All the books mentioned in today's episode are listed in the show notes so you can explore them at your own pace. If something resonated with you today, or you have a favorite writing resource to share, I would love to hear about it. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and Blue Sky, or reach out through my website. Until next time, keep showing up, stay curious, and write, writer, write.